Hi gentlemen, Mike Weissar here again. It's December 5th, 2022, and this is the 5th edition, I think, of Consultants in Carhartts Drinking Coffee. As we ended our last video from late last week, we began talking about hidden work stoppages, and I'd like to dive into that today. What are these hidden work stoppages that we're talking about, and what's this vortex that I keep talking about in the videos? And it's just something that we've come up with to sort of demonstrate how much effect these hidden work stoppages are having on, the good flow of a project. So let's dive right in. I just tried to categorize some of this stuff. So this would be just an example of a small item, but we had a job where we had a bunch of walls that were 6-inch walls framed, going into 8-inch beams, right? So the 8-inch beams run along the ceiling, and nobody really knew what to do. The trade was saying it was going to cost more money. The architects were saying, it shouldn't cost any more money. Everybody was saying, look, whatever the decision is, just make the decision. And it just wasn't being driven. And so it just sort of swirled into that vortex. And over time, the electricians and plumbers started really jumping on everybody saying, look, you're completely messing up our flow. We've got a lot of other things that have to happen in these rooms. And because of this wall, we can't do any of them. And now we've got these crews here that are we're finding work for them rather than working through the good flow of the project. So you multiply that times, 10 or a dozen of these small issues, and they can have this huge effect every time you're trying to plan the job. You just keep running into all these roadblocks building the details of that plan. Another one is we believe that we have a task owner. Right? So you're having a conversation and something like this. You guys will see this as familiar. Superintendent's talking with one of the trade owners. There's a bunch of us standing there. We're out on the job. And at the end of the conversation, the superintendent will say, okay, Joe, you got that? And he says, yep, got it. But in the conversation, if you really listened, Joe made it clear that he wasn't doing anything because in his contract, any engineering has to be covered by the architects or the contractor. He is not going to cover any of the engineering. In that conversation, I could tell the superintendent was believing he was going to go get the engineering completed, then do the shop drawings, right? You could see the vagueness, and as the superintendent walked away, he really felt like that trade owned it. And the trade really felt like he understood that I'm not doing anything until he's got an engineer. And I'd watch these kinds of things over and over, and they just grind to this spot where all of a sudden the superintendent or project manager realizes, hey, we don't have the shop drawings, and this guy was going to get them to us. Where the heck is that? It's 2 weeks late now, and he hasn't even started. Okay, so you see that kind of thing multiply. So you put those two together, you start to have sort of this crippling effect on the ability to really plan the job. Another one is arguments about solutions. So I've seen this over and over. There's some sort of an issue on the job, and the contractor may have a solution, and the architect has a solution, and the engineers and the owners, and everybody has these different ideas about different solutions, and they're not sure what to do with it yet, right? So I know, and you guys are probably thinking to yourselves, choosing by advantage, or target value design, and that's true, but these guys not having any of those skills yet, these things will fall in to that vortex very easily, get lost there. And then at some point, now you guys will recognize this, at some point, we have to make a decision. And we always do. The buildings always get built, right? So with no new information, at some point, once the pain here is less than the pain here, right? So the pain of making the decision now is more than the pain of waiting. So, once we get to that point, we will make a decision. So that's one of the things we challenge people with is, look, we're going to make a decision on this sooner or later. Let's just do it now and do it with the facts and use a little bit of science, right? We can either use some of the lean processes or choosing by advantage to make those decisions. Issues. The issue is big. The solution is expensive. That's another one that will fall into the vortex when everybody steps back and realizes, oh man, this no matter what, this is going to be expensive. And there'll be some conversation about it, excuse me, but it'll get put off, and I've watched these things get put off for months, even up to a year. I've seen it happen. And that is one of the difficult problems in that it'll often, when it's a big problem like that, it often affects the entire job. But in some cases, it can be put off that long and we'll keep doing the work. It's still going to have to be addressed. Would have been way better to address it up here in the process, but it's one of those things that gets pushed down the line until we have to face it. Trade misses something big in the specs and can't absorb the cost. So that's another one that we see quite a bit. The trade just simply misses the information in the specs, and they get to the point where it's time to actually do the work. At that point, everyone realizes, uh-oh, what you bid on is not going to meet the specifications for this job. The negotiations start, but the fact is that trade's a smaller trade, and if it's an expensive thing that they missed, they're simply not, it's just, they can't absorb that cost. So something big has to happen, and again, that'll go into the vortex because it's really uncomfortable. It'll go in there and wait until it has to be addressed, usually way within the lead time of the materials, and now we're in real trouble. We've really hurt the project. The trade goes out of business, or, in the last couple of years, the whole escalation of supply chain costs, material costs, of just COVID hurting everybody's business, we've had quite a bit of this. And so it's one of the things that you have to be prepared for, always, I know. But in today's world, it seems like it's a bit more, you have to really be prepared to jump in and go, all right? And then this is one of the items that can really scare people, and they step back and they see the enormity of the problem, and they realize, oh no, this is gonna be really complex, I'm already busy, and then we pull back from diving into the detail, right? So that's a real tough one. So then let's talk about some of the paradigms that fit in this process, that work against us. And there are things I think you guys will recognize from watching work yourselves. So one of the paradigms that we've watched is the should be versus what is. That trade should be better managed. They should be on top of things. They should be at this point in the process, should be planning, etc. The fact is they're not. So the whole should be versus what is issue in construction is something we have to face, because it's so frustrating when somebody should be better at doing what they're doing, because you're probably right. They probably should be, right? But they're not. And then the question comes down to, can we get our arms around just, that deep breath where we go, okay, they're just not going to be good at this. We're going to have to go in and help them. Let's talk about how we go in and help them, make this thing work correctly. Threatening to motivate. Now this is one that, command and control, and if somebody, one of my favorite project managers to work with, he has this saying that says, the beatings will continue until motivation improves or attitudes improve, right? Something to that effect. And so I've seen a lot of this, and oftentimes, I just want to say, oftentimes when our instinct is to go pound on somebody to get them motivated, if we take a deep breath, we step back and we say, hang on, let's bring the guy in a moment where everybody can kind of take a deep breath and relax for a second. Talk about the work that they've got right in front of them, not 6 months worth of work, the work right in front of them. Walk out on the job with them, do the planning, come back to the big room, get it planned out. In almost every case, you guys, I have seen these guys relax, go, okay, now I see what we're supposed to do. I do have the manpower to do it. Here's the plan for the next few weeks. And those guys will normally be very successful. And sometimes you have to manage them every week or two, right? The should be versus what is again. The whole assuming ownership thing that we talked about up here, don't assume ownership, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Complexity equals time. That's not true. Complexity should not equal time. Here's what I mean. If you've got a very complex issue that you need resolved, you need a good manager, somebody who can get their arms around that kind of detail or that magnitude of a problem and doesn't get into the vortex themselves, right? They know how to do that. They have those skills. So in my experience, if we put the right people on those processes, you're going to do great. Or if you put somebody who's close to being there and you're going to mentor them, you're going to do great there. But complexity does not equal time. That's not true. And later we can talk more about that in detail. The other thing about lean is just the lean process itself uses time to manage it. Now, it takes a few years to get your head around why that's the case. That's the case in manufacturing, healthcare, distribution, financial markets, construction. There's a really important reason why you use time to manage all of your processes, and it is not to drive people to work faster. It's literally the opposite. And we can talk about all that kind of thing later, but in construction, I just want to make the point. Time needs to start being measured in minutes and hours, and sometimes days, but no more of this weeks and months thing. That's just got to be out the window. When you've got issues to deal with, they need to be handled immediately, and we got to get over this whole thing that we've got days and weeks to get problems solved. And then the other paradigm is reporting on results. So we assign people work to do, then we step back and see if they did it, and they just come in and report. We never actually go out there, help manage making sure that that work's getting done. Okay, so that's where we're starting from here, and you guys will have a lot more ideas in here, and I can't wait to hear your input back again. But that's just my short list. And I think what you'll begin to find is they really fit into categories, these small items, and then tasks that people think have been assigned, and arguments about solutions. So there's these categories that are starting to come to the surface. I think you guys will have categories I've missed, or different categories, things to that effect. But this is really the beginning of us beginning to recognize it's something that has to be managed. Okay, so now you've got this issues log, and you guys haven't seen the issues log yet, but the whole point of the issues log is to manage ball in court. Okay? So it's to take all kinds of issues, so capture all the issues that have to be taken care of on the job, all of them. And then manage ball in court. Who owns that issue? We know who owns that issue, right? Very clearly. What is it they're going to do, and when are they going to have it done, and who's going to get it next, right? Manage ball in court. But now, the only way this tool works is just a spreadsheet. The only way this tool works is if we learn from our paradigms and we learn from what we think we're finding as far as the categories of hidden, work stoppages, and we come over and apply our philosophies. And when we do, you guys will find that the turnaround on the job happens in days. It's absolutely phenomenal how fast this happens. And you think it won't. You think it's going to take months to get caught up because you got all these past change orders and RFIs sitting there and all kinds of issues. Maybe a big book full of field reviews that haven't been addressed, right? So it happens incredibly fast because once a team begins actually start managing this kind of detail, it's amazing how simple, really, these things are to get to conclusion. But you have to have all those stakeholders really supporting you. So let's jump into the philosophies. You're going to start managing what is. You're going to take that deep breath, and the should be goes out the window, right? So we're going to manage what is. And guys, some trades are just managed so well, all you got to do is step back and let them go. I love that. But oftentimes trades aren't very good at managing, or they just have their people spread too thin. And we're going to have to go help them manage, right? But it's not nearly as big a deal as we make it. We just have to get past the frustration that they should be doing it themselves. Not arguing that. Just saying it's just not the case all the time. And you have to be good at going out and managing these guys, and then you'll have a good job flow. Okay, anyway, monitoring progress, right? So if we're going to monitor progress, that insinuates we know where everything is. So somebody's got to be managing this issues log, checking on it every single day, and making sure they understand who's got what, where's the ball in court, is that guy tracking to get it done? What's the process to make sure that we manage that, right? It's very simple. It takes very little time, but somebody has to do it. Drive to completion. So that's the other thing. When we're managing ball in court and we hand something to somebody, we're going to monitor progress. So we have maybe 10 items that have to get done in order for a issue to be resolved, right? The engineer's going to look at it. He's going to send it to the architect. Once he thinks he has the answer, the architect's going to talk with the owner. The owner's going to come back to the architect, right? There's all these issues that have to happen. So this person is going to monitor progress. In other words, they're going to make sure that each person is tracking to get it done. They're not going to wait till people report that they didn't get it done, right? We don't report on results anymore. We monitor progress. Drive to completion. Identify hidden stoppages. That's what we were already talking about. And Genshi Genbutsu. We'll practice this over and over. And I know you guys have heard it 100 times, but I'm here to tell you after 37 years of doing this, I still have to learn this lesson all the time. Constantly, I have to remind myself to, to go out and look with the drawings in hand, at the stuff that we need to look at, whatever issue we're talking about, with the right engineers and architects and contractors and trades, right? All the right, an owner if I need to. Everybody stands there, all the right information, and we'll resolve it. But if we fail to do that, we're going to start guessing and assuming, and we're right back in the same boat we've always been in. Collaborate all the way to dollars. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen, this is crazy. It's part of construction, I get it. But really interesting. You have a guy who's going to add 10 feet of pipe because we're going to put in a sink that we didn't know we were going to put in, and it's a change and all that. And the guy comes back with $10,000 for the sink and the pipe. And $10,000, what are you talking about? There's a 10-foot pipe here, and there's this big conversation that goes on around it, and he's firm, no way. I've seen a whole bunch of this, and it's absolutely amazing to me how much money is disconnected from how much money can be disconnected from the work to be completed, right? And I know that's not new to you guys, but to me it was. And if we stand there with everybody, the whole team, like I was just talking about, and we talk about that pipe and that sink, and we all kind of cowboy math out the numbers, we're going to get within a few $100. Well, okay, it's going to take you, what, about 10 hours to do that? Put that sink in, sink's a couple $1,000s with the cabinet. So we're, what, about $3,000, $4,000? And there we go, yeah, about $3,000, $4,000. And you can get to that number, but talk about it then, and you will get to reasonable numbers. If you wait in the process till later, those numbers can be just way disconnected from what appears to be the work to be completed. Minutes, hours, days. That's the way we measure our time, right? So that's one of our philosophies, is that when we have an issue, we're on it immediately, right? Minutes is where we target. Stop the line and escalate. None of this works if we don't have a stop the line and escalate process. So at Toyota, they have the cable, right, that you pull. And so anybody in the process will pull the cable if something happens and they can't build their car or they can't build at their station. And that's because they tried to do something, they couldn't do it. They either didn't have the materials, or a nut was stripped on a bolt, a wire broke, I don't know, something happened. It's got to be the same thing in this process. We have to know the moment we can't solve an issue. We've got to be able to pull that cord and go solve that issue. But oftentimes the issue will become bigger than the group. And we're going to need to pull in maybe owners of trades. We're going to have to pull in engineers. We're going to have to pull in the owner group and the architect, right? So we have to have an ability to escalate, and that has to happen in minutes and hours. It can't be days, weeks, months, right? This whole thing where a committee meets every 2 weeks for OAEC to make all the decisions, it can't work, right? So here's the deal. It can't work. You can't have an argument that that's the way we're going to do it. No, you're not. You can't do it like that. It can't work. You have to be able to stop the line and escalate, right? So the process that you put in place to stop the line and escalate can't be within rules that make it impossible to do that. You have to be able to do it quickly. But you can imagine, if you're managing this way and you have a good escalation process, how quickly these issues can be resolved, right? Assigning ownership, and then the owner versus complexity issue that we just talked about, all ends up being managed at the issues log. So now my next video, I'll just go ahead and draw up here a basic issues log, and we'll go over the components of it, right? But I just want to make the point again. The issues log is just a tool. It's just a spreadsheet. You guys are going to look at the columns and go, yeah, okay, great. It's not that impressive. It's a spreadsheet. The whole idea is understanding these philosophies that have to be applied to make the issues log work. What is this? And how do you manage this stuff? And what are these? So that we get really good, right? The idea is that we're going to get really good at identifying hidden stoppages. Every day we're going to get better and better at it, because this stuff is clever. I'm here to tell you, every week it's just really interesting to see how this whole part of the process works. All right? So again, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please give me feedback, as you guys always do. Let me know what you think, and whether I'm missing things or ideas that came to mind and all that. And I'll try to get that issues log video out as soon as, I think in the next couple of days I'll have that out to you.